I'm here today with David Baber. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Could you tell me a little bit about your book?
Well, I got the idea first off from Teresa Keller. Gave me the idea to write this book in the first place because I have always been a fan of game shows, and when I came to Emory Henry in 1993, she had seen my research and said, "Why don't you write a book?" And so that's how the idea got started for that.
Right. And you work at the library as a circulation clerk?
Circulation assistant at the library.
Right. And you've also been a disc jockey and a radio announcer?
Yeah, done a little bit of everything in there.
That's right. What sort of inspired you to write this book?
Well, for one thing, like I was saying, I love game shows, and there had never been another book like this out there. I was always interested in the MCs, and there was never a book like that out there. There were autobiographies by Monty Hall and Art Linkletter and people like that, but there had never been a book that had about 30 of them or 40 of them in one volume. And I looked around, couldn't find anything like it, and so I just decided to go with that format and put as many of them in one volume as I could, sort of like an encyclopedia.
Right. And the book is titled Television Game Show Host Biography of 32 Stars by David Baber. Could you give us a outline of this book?
Well, that's easy. It's 32 MCs, and they're all listed in alphabetical order from, well, instead of A to Z, B to W in this case, from Bob Barker all the way to Chuck Woolery. And you can flip through it to any chapter you want. They're all self-contained, and every chapter has their biography. It has a list of all the TV shows and the radio shows and maybe any movie gigs that they did outside of the game show world, and personal history about when they were born and where they were born, family, and anything like that.
Who were some of the game show hosts that you talked personally with?
Well, all of them were telephone interviews, and I spoke with the only current MC that I could get to speak to me was Alex Trebek. I couldn't get Bob Barker, couldn't get Pat Sajak or Regis Philbin. I came close with a couple of them, but Alex Trebek, Monty Hall, who did Let's Make a Deal, and that's currently on Game Show Network, and some others like Tom Kennedy and Jack Nars. Most of them are MCs from a different generation. Really, by all rights, I shouldn't know a lot of these guys, but I've researched them, and that's how I came across it. So a lot of people today probably don't know who some of them are, but there's a mixture of the older ones and the younger ones in there. And the youngest one, by the way, is Ray Combs. He did Family Feud about 20 years ago.
What were they like when you spoke to them over the phone?
Most of them were really courteous. Most of the time when I would start off, they were a little unsure, as I was. And usually after a few minutes, we would break the ice. And then I found out that a lot of times they would volunteer more information than I bargained for. And it just depended on the host. But some of them were a little more guarded.
Now, is that where some of the scandals came from, or did you cover that independently?
Well, the scandals, I was a little hesitant to ask anything about anything scandalous, especially if it was personal. One of the people I interviewed wasn't even one of the hosts. It was a producer, Bob Noah, and I guess he's probably about 80 now. And he was involved in the quiz show scandals in the 1950s. And Bob worked on one show called 21, and then I think also on another one, Tic-Tac-Doe. And when I tried to ask him about it, he just declined to comment. He said, "I wrote a book about it. I'm all talked out."
Right.
Whereas another one, Howard Felsher, who was directly involved, now he openly spoke about them.
What were some of the other scandals that you discussed?
Well, let's see. There was an instance of, like I was telling you, Ray Combs just now. He committed suicide after his run on Family Feud ended. It wasn't just from that, but it was a combination of personal and professional setbacks, and plus some health problems that drove him to it. There was also a scandal on a show called Press Your Luck that took place back in 1984, and I was 9 years old at the time and remember watching that particular show. but it's on Game Show Network, and the way the game worked was this big game board with 18 squares, had a light that bounced around, you hit a plunger, stop it, and whatever it landed on, you won it. And it looked like it was random, but they had this one contestant who memorized the patterns and figured out that there was only 6 light patterns. It looked like there was no pattern to it.
Right.
And he videotaped the show for months and figured out, oh, there's only 6 light patterns here. So he gets on the show and takes them for $110,000 in one day.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, he almost didn't get his money either. But the networks and the powers that be said, no, he did his homework. We can't deny him the money.
What was the hardest part about writing this book?
Well, getting started was really hard because initially I didn't know, I kind of had my framework in mind, but getting those first interviews was really hard. And the first interview I got was in 1999, and it was Art James, who passed away in 2004. And then it was another year before I got the second interview with Monty Hall. And then there was still another 2 years before that third one. I mean, initially nobody would talk to me about it.
How long did it take overall to write the book?
From the time I started the research in 1993 until the final draft, the final cut was submitted in October of 2006, so about 13 years off and on.
Right, so you've put a lot of time into this.
Oh yeah, if I had to make a living as an author, I would starve to death. There's no way I would do it full time.
Right, right. Are there any changes looking back now that you would make?
Well, there was some facts in there that I had wrong. I found out afterward. Mostly it was minor things. But I wish that I had interviewed more people than I did. There were some that I had an opportunity to speak with, and I didn't take advantage of it. Or I may have had an opportunity and I didn't pursue it. And after the fact, I think of, oh, I could have talked to so-and-so, and maybe they could have given me some insight.
Right.
Because a lot of the MCs are deceased, and so for those people, I would locate family or locate producers. And there are so many of them who are still around that we don't know about, I didn't know about.
Right.
And it was just a matter of knowing who to speak with.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk about your book and being with us here today.
Thank you, Blake.
We've enjoyed it.